All right, good morning. I'm Lori. I'm one of the pastors here at Westlight. Hey, good morning. And because of the devastation of the wildfires, I asked Cox if I could just have one more week to speak. So I promise you, he will be back to talk about Philippians next week. I promise. I'm not going to ask for any more. Okay. But a lot of us have been feeling overwhelmed and grieving. And so as Cox and I were processing this, we're like, let's just do one more week. So it wasn't just me begging, no. Okay, so as you remember, 2 weeks ago, we put on our own oxygen masks first, and we connected with God in prayer. Remember the word prayer. And then last Sunday, oh my gosh, Tammy and Aaron shared just their story. It was so beautiful, and they just gave a great testimony to God's grace and His love and His help. And so today we're going to address the question of how can we support one another? This is the question we want to answer today. There is nobody back there. Okay, anyway, it's how do we support one another? Not a big deal. Okay. Let me tell you, I wish there was one universal answer. Thank you, Christine. I wish there was one universal answer that we could all use that we know would be guaranteed helpful. But there's no one simple answer because grief and dealing with chaos is so complex, right? There's people who are very open and they want to share. And then there's some people who are very private. There's some people who need to process with people. And there's some people who are like, I just want to be alone and process by myself. There's some people who are very aware of their feelings. I don't know how they know. And there's some people like me who are like, I have no idea. I don't know what I feel and I don't know what I need. And it's just so hard. And we're all grieving and we all feel like maybe they grieve the same way that I do. Or maybe they should grieve the same way I do, right? Sometimes I get so judgy, like, well, how come they need to take more time? But I'm running around doing whatever, right? And so we can get very judgy and critical, and it's because we're stressed out, because you guys were going through a lot. And so we can be critical of ourselves, and we can be critical of others. And so what are we supposed to do? This kind of stress puts a lot of pressure on marriages, on families. I was talking to someone and they're like, oh my gosh, think about how many people are going to be drinking so much. It's like, oh yeah, we got to let it out somewhere, right? I'm not saying we should. Edit that out of the sermon cuts. Okay, but it puts a lot of pressure on families, on communities, and imagine there's hundreds of thousands of people who are going through this all at the same time. And so it's just, we're all going to be on edge and we all need support. So to explore how we can support one another, because I was gonna to explore, I'm gonna steal from Pastor Stan. So we're gonna review his sermon on December 8th. He spoke about the relationship between the Apostle Paul and Epaphroditus in Philippians 2, and it was a beautiful story of how we can support one another. So I thought, they supported one another, they gave hope and strength in the challenging times, and Paul was like the strongest leader of the early church, and even he needed support and care at that time. So if you remember, Paul at the time was imprisoned in Rome. He was for 2 years. He was unable to travel and share the gospel. He was unable to connect with his close friends. The churches that he started were like his little babies. They were these new Jewish Christians who were learning how to live out the Christian faith and what it means to be a follower of Jesus. They had to do that with Gentiles who they looked down on and hated. They were dealing with serious moral issues. They were being swayed by false teachers. So there was a lot going on. And Paul, while he was in prison, he could welcome visitors. And he could preach the gospel to them, but he couldn't go to be with them. All he could do was write letters to them. And so he wrote the letters, Philippians, Ephesians, Colossians, and Philemon, all while he was in prison. And based on Paul's writings and his actions, he was highly motivated and driven, right? So this must have been super hard for him because he probably wanted to go out there, tell the people about Jesus, and get his job done, get things done. But he was just stuck in prison. So Epaphroditus traveled a great distance to visit Paul, bringing the financial gift from the Philippian church. And Pastor Stan emphasized how that beyond meeting Paul's material needs, Epaphroditus provided Paul's emotional connection that he needed, reminding Paul that he wasn't alone. So what do Paul and Epaphroditus teach us about how we can support one another? It's through prayer, care, and share. That's why I wanted it all to rhyme so it'd be easy to remember. So remember, 2 weeks ago we did prayer. Today, it's mostly for me to remember, but it might be helpful to all of you. So today we're going to talk about care and share. So care is the healthy emotional connection. It's presence with someone. 2 weeks ago, we practiced God's presence with us. So care is our emotional presence with one another. And share is the healthy connection, the healthy practical connection of giving our time and our resources. And we need both care and share to help us move forward. And again, I affirm what Pastor Stan mentioned 2 weeks ago, that emotional connection, as hard as it is, it's so much easier to share our material things, but emotional connection might be more what we need than the material things. The Spirit of God is moving. He's bringing us back to God. He's bringing us back to one another. And just, God hates destruction and death. And so the Spirit is always moving to restore and rebuild. And I wish the Spirit would move a little faster. Like, come on. But He's very slow. And I wish one day, Pastor Stan, you're going to have to share. That's a sermon for you to share about the slowness of the Spirit and how He moves. But just like Epaphroditus joined in how the Spirit was moving when he volunteered to take the Philippians church gift, we can learn from how he joined in, what he did, and how the Spirit brought healing and connection to Paul. So Epaphroditus provided care for Paul. He was present with Paul. And Paul felt safe, and it fostered that emotional connection. It was like listening. I need to do this, listening without really speaking or speaking last. Right? It's just presence with one another. And so God designed us. This is amazing. God designed us to emotionally connect with one another. Like when we feel present with others, when that connection that we feel that's so good, those are the endorphins that God created our body to create when we connect with one another. So we were created to connect. John Townsend, the author of People Fuel, he wrote this. He has this quote: "The idea is simple. We need to need each other. People are the fuel for us to grow, be healthy, and prosper. God created a system in which we are to need not only Him, but also one another. That means we need to know what we need. We need to recognize who can supply it, because not everyone can supply it. And we have to have the skills to get it." So to help us practice care, you guys, if you've been here, we did the Fuel Up series 5 years ago, and I could have printed like 500 cards, but it was like print 1,000 for the same price. So I had to get a good value. So you guys should have received these cards that we had passed out originally 5 years ago, and we still have hundreds of them left. So please pass them out to your friends, or, we'll pass them out again in another 5 years. But I'm bringing back, so how would we use this beautiful tool? It would be like if Epaphroditus went to go visit Paul in prison, and he's like, here's the gift from the Philippian church. And Paul's like, oh, this is awesome. This is so generous. And then Epaphroditus is like, okay, Paul, tell me what's going on. What are you struggling with? Tell me how you're feeling. And Paul would be like, oh, okay, let me get my Fuel Up card, written in the original Greek. And he would be like, okay, this is what I need. Quadrant run. Let me look at quadrant one. These other quadrants, they're kind of easy. We kind of know them. But this quadrant one is really God's grace. And if you don't know what you need, we all probably, especially during what we're going through, we probably most likely need quadrant 1. So Paul would be like, acceptance, attunement, validation, identification, containment, comfort. What do I need? And he'd like pay attention to his body. What do I need? What do I need? And so pretend that Paul says, I need acceptance. So you could look at your card, or you could, look at your card, or this. I need connection without judgment. I need someone to be present with me without saying that what I did was right or wrong or good or bad. And helpful hints, learn from my mistakes. Sometimes I'll tell people, oh, I need this. I won't say what I need. I'll just blah, 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 tell them my problems. And then they begin to tell me that was bad. And then I'll say, hey, I just need acceptance, okay? Don't tell me what I did was bad. Try to say you need acceptance before you start sharing. Tell them, I need you to listen before. Don't tell me it's right or wrong or good or bad. And then it's really more connecting that way. I don't know why. Okay, so he pretend like Paul's sharing, and Epaphroditus, he wants to give him acceptance. He's trying to feel him up. And so he says, oh, you know what, Paul? I know that you feel like you could do more. You're stuck in prison, and I know that you feel like you could do more. But you know what? You are doing the best that you can under these unbelievable circumstances. You are not failing, and I am with you. Oh, wouldn't that be so awesome? Epaphroditus shouldn't say, it's not so bad. It could be worse. That's not acceptance, okay? And if Paul's like, oh, I have so much to share, and Epaphroditus isn't asking me about my fill-up card, he's not asking me how I'm doing, he can initiate, and he could say, Epaphroditus, I'm so glad you're here. Can I tell you something? I feel like I'm failing in my ministry, and I just need to know that you are for me and you're with me. See, he doesn't have to wait around. He could ask for it. We can ask for it. Okay, so pretend Paul's like, oh, I think I need attunement. Attunement is being aware of what another is experiencing and responding to it. It's kind of like what Brene Brown calls empathy. And she says empathy is more than just walking in another person's shoes. It's believing that they are going through what they are going through, even if we don't believe it. Even if our minds are like, really? We have to just choose to believe them. So Epaphroditus can say, I believe you when you say you are frustrated and lonely. Inside, I don't really get it, but don't say that, but just, I believe you. Or he could say, or he shouldn't say, I believe you when you say you're frustrated and lonely, but come on, at least the Church of Philippi is helping you out. That's not helpful. That's not attunement. And then if Paul's waiting for Epaphroditus to say something, he could say, you know what? He can initiate. He could say, Epaphroditus, can you bring me some coffee? And can we just spend a few minutes just talking, and I can tell you how I feel? And then if you could just listen and just just walk with me with this. Then he could just ask for it. He doesn't have to wait. Okay, next, validation. Convey that my experience is significant and not to be dismissed. We all tend to minimize our circumstances and just like, oh, it's not that bad. And it seems like validating, why would you want to validate? It makes it more painful because we're highlighting the pain. But you know what? The validation, it can be so healing and so helpful. And so if Epaphroditus wanted to validate Paul's feelings and his experience, he could say, I'm sorry that you're experiencing this. You are such a go-getter, and being stuck must be so hard. It must be so frustrating. So he's validating his experience and his feelings. What Epaphroditus shouldn't say is, dude, you're so dramatic. Just suck it up. That is not validation. Okay. And then Paul, if he's waiting for Epaphroditus to say, he doesn't have to wait for him. He could say, can you validate what I'm going through is a lot? Because it feels like a lot, but I'm not sure. Can I just tell you about it? Okay, the next one is identification. Share your similar story so that people know we're not alone. I love identification. And so Epaphroditus could say, you know what? I've never been imprisoned. But remember earlier when I was here and I was sick and we all thought I was going to die? I thought I was going to die. I felt so helpless and powerless. And I was thinking about all the things that I wanted to do. is that kind of like how you're feeling? And then Paul would say, yes, that's exactly how I'm feeling. You identify with me. What Epaphroditus shouldn't do is, when he's asking for identification, to say, oh, remember when I got sick? And then talk like, an hour about how he got sick. Because then he totally misses Paul and what Paul needed. He could do it another time when he's like, okay, now my turn. And then Paul can fuel Epaphroditus up. What Paul can say is, man, this is my experience. Have you experienced something like this? Like, is it just me? And then Epaphroditus can just briefly share, because we all want to know that we're not alone. Okay, next one is containment. Allow others to vent while staying warm without reacting. Just allowing people to get stuff off their chest. So if Paul's like, oh, I need containment, and then he just starts sharing, and then Epaphroditus could be like, oh yeah, and then what happened? Or tell me more, or how did that feel? And he could just help draw Paul out and all of his experience. What Epaphroditus shouldn't do is cut Paul off and say, Paul, you always talk about being content in all circumstances, so just do that. That is not containment. That's cutting him off and not dealing with it. Okay, what Paul can say if he's like waiting, or he wants Epaphroditus to listen, to fuel him up, he can ask him like, hey, can you fuel me up? Can I share with you about 5 minutes? I just need to get something off my chest. Like, that Roman guard just said something and it triggered me and drove me crazy. Can I just tell it to you? And then Epaphroditus say, yeah, go ahead, share. Get it off your chest. The last one is comfort. Provide support for someone's loss. This is so hard, but we need support for our losses, right? Whether it's if we lost a loved one, a home, unmet expectations. We've been losing our hopes and our dreams. And when we experience this loss, we need comfort. And so this is hard. Like, what comfort is to us may not be comfort to other people. And that's why it's so important to ask, like, well, what do you need? So we can ask. Epaphroditus could sit with Paul and just be quiet. And if he just needs someone to be with him in the quiet, he can cry with Paul if Paul wants someone to cry with him. It's just comforting that person. I loved how Aaron was comforting Tammy last week, and he put his arm around her and was patting her. That was so sweet. So if we need comfort but we don't know how to ask for it, we could just say, hey, can you give me a hug? I don't know if guys do that, if Epaphroditus and Paul would do that, but you guys do your own thing. Do your punch or whatever you guys do. But what Epaphroditus shouldn't say is, here's what you need to do. Let me tell you. You need to first forgive, and then second, move on. Come on, just move on. So that's quadrant one. That's what how Paul and Epaphroditus could care for one another to create that space for emotional connection. But do you see how important it is to ask, like, what do you need? Because we don't know. I could be trying to comfort them and hug them, and they're like, lady, get away from me. I just need you to listen to me, right? Or we might miss people if we just assume we know what kind of emotional connection they need. So we could always ask. And that's the beauty of the cards. You can take a picture of it and, like, keep it on your phone. Okay, this is commercial. Okay, so we have Epaphroditus and Paul's example of caring for one another, which is so important to our emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. But of course, we also have practical needs. And Paul had practical needs, and Epaphroditus brought him the generous gift from the church from Philippi. So this is what we're talking about, sharing, the giving of our resources, our time, and our finances and materials. And I love how Paul lets his needs be known. I don't know what my needs are, but you know what I mean? He knew, and he let the churches know, and they responded so generously, not because they felt obligated to, not because, oh, Paul started our church, we should give him money, or, oh, well, we want to be the best church out of all the churches he started, so we're going to give him the most. I mean, it wasn't anything like that. They gave so generously because they loved Jesus, they believed in the movement, and they loved Paul. And so gifts can be so powerful. They can help us to feel seen and valued, and sharing our resources really help us to feel like, oh, we're not alone. We're seen. We're receiving support and help. The Spirit, it reminds us that the Spirit is always moving. And so Westlight, can I just say you guys are incredible at sharing. You guys are like the most generous church that I have ever known. And so I've been a recipient of that. I have witnessed it. And so you guys get an A+ in sharing. Yeah. Yes. But I want to challenge us. I'm like, we've got to have some kind of challenge. But I'm not going to encourage you or challenge us, me too, to give more. I want to encourage us to give deeper. Okay? So instead of like, oh, they must need this, I'm going to get this. Like, ask them, what do you need? Honey, you seem a little grouchy today. No, don't start like that. Just say, what do you need today? Right? And so you could just ask them, and then, bring out your feel card. How are you feeling? Because on one side has the feelings. And then you can ask them, what do you think you need? Do you think identification? Do you just need containment? What do you need? Or, like, what do you need physically? Like, we can miss people so much with the sharing, because I could give someone a Target card and they would love it. They would always use it, I'm sure. But what if they were like, this is great, thank you, Lori, but you know what? I'm struggling because I have this insurance policy and it's just like blah, 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 blah. I can't even focus on the details. Then I wouldn't be the one to help them with the details because that's not my thing. But I could connect them with someone who's good at that, who knows that stuff, right? So we don't have to be the one to meet their needs just because we ask, but we can connect them with people. Or if they're like, oh, I got to read this, and I got to organize all these papers, I don't have to be the one to organize it for them because that's my go-to. I got to fix it and I got to organize it. No, but I could give them an hour of my time. Like, I could help them in the way that I could help them with just like in the little baby steps. We don't have to do it all, because I know asking could be kind of, what are they going to say? What am I committing to? But just asking doesn't mean that we have to commit to anything. It could be just meeting them where they're at and understanding what they really need, and providing for them, sharing with them in a way that helps us to see one another and helps us to really support one another. So if someone says, I don't need anything, just your prayers, my thing is like, no, but you really need something. Well, how can I help? No, believe them. If they're like, just pray for me, then just pray for them. Respect their what they're sharing. Be grateful that they shared that they're asking for prayer, and just believe them and just pray for them. Unless they're Japanese. Because sometimes Japanese, you have to ask 3 times. I know, it's crazy, right? And then at the 3rd time, they're like, okay. So just know we got that complexity going on too. Okay. But if they really say, no, I don't need anything, and you guys are so generous, and you're like, no, but I need to give something, then one of my friends who just gone through a lot of trauma, he was saying, just food. People always need food. But then, like, logistics overwhelms me, and I'm like, I have to figure out when to bring over the meal and what they like. So my suggestion is just, a Grubhub gift card or whatever they use. Postmates, DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever is out there. And that way, if you send it to them, they might be working or busy till 10 o'clock at night. They can get their meal ordered, have it delivered without feeling like they have to pay a lot. And they could get the food when they need it and when they want it, and get the food that is delicious to them on that day, okay? But that's only if you just really have to share something. Okay, and some of you have been asking, well, what's Westlight going to do? And I think we definitely want to do something as a church. But right now, there's a lot of things that people have to figure out, and there's a lot of help. I love the Fire Aid concert this past week, but we want to we're in a wait and see mode and just see kind of where people need, because a lot of the people are probably going to be going back to their homes, or, the helpers and I don't know. We're just in a wait and see mode where we could see, well, how can we help the people that need help when a lot of people have when a lot of the support kind of disappears, we are here. And I asked Kadu, we know how to wait, because if you guys were here when we did Habitat for Humanity, we all helped build and raise money for Kadu's house, which was called Patience House. And it took years. And so I know that you guys know what it's like to stick with a challenge and to help overcome it, even if it takes years. sorry. So I just wanted to bring that up, that's kind of the Westlight way, right? We're with you, even if it's slow. We've done it before, and we'll do it again. Okay, to finish up, I wanted to read Philippians 4, 14 through 19. This is at the end of Paul's letter, and he says, yet it was good of you to share in my troubles. He felt their presence. He felt their connection emotionally. He felt their share, the care and the share. And he said, verse 15, moreover, as you Philippians know, in the early days of your acquaintance with the gospel, when I set out from Macedonia, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving except you only. So it was over time. It wasn't just this one-time gift. It was just repeated share and care and share. For even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent me aid more than once when I was in need. Not that I desire gifts. What I desire is that more be credited to your account. I have received full payment and have more than enough. I am amply supplied. Now that I have received from Epaphroditus the gifts you sent, they are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. Doesn't he sound like a man who has experienced God's care and God's share? Like he sounds like he's just so full that he knows he's not alone in his struggle. So Paul and the Philippian church, they modeled for us this mutual giving and receiving, which reflects God's love slowly over time. The Spirit was moving then, and even though we can't see it, we can trust that the Spirit is moving now, that he's restoring what is broken and bringing life and beauty. And so today we have that opportunity to ask, what do you need? What do you need? And we can ask ourselves, what do I need? So if someone asks us, what do you need? We have an answer. Or if we think, well, what do I need? I can ask someone to help fuel me up and help provide what I need. Because grief is unique and we can't assume, we need to ask this question to one another and to ourselves. So prayer, care, and share, they constitute the material of the covering of our interaction together in the midst of the storm that we're going through. And may the Spirit give us the grace and the courage that we need to ask for support and also to give support. Paul taught us that this one time, it's not a one-time thing, but we can over the next weeks and months and years practice prayer, care, and share. And as we step into the Spirit's movement and what he's doing and how he's healing, we can walk together through our grief and restoration. And in doing so, this is how we're going to experience heaven together. Let's pray.